on cross-selling, a really hot topic in the industry, has been a hot topic here at Senior Marketing Specialists for years. And so we're excited to talk with you guys today about cross-selling in 2026. Now, the reason why we specifically named this 2026 is everything that we're saying here today can be applied to other years as well. But in 2026, it is more important than ever. And for reasons that are obvious, make up some lost income with those PDP commissions and everything like that, and more reasons why we'll dive into it. But we're happy that you're here. We're happy that you are spending the time to invest in some education and growing your business. My name is Sadie Palmer. I am the Strategic Communications Lead here at Senior Marketing Specialists. And today I have with me the real cross-selling pro, Jeffrey Jones. Jeffrey, will you please introduce yourself and explain to people what you do here at Senior Marketing Specialists?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give kind of a quick background. I had jumped into the Medicare sales stuff, 2018, 2019 now. Worked with an agency that was partnered with Senior Marketing Specialist, came over here, which I think I'm on my 3rd or 4th year now, so time goes by fast.
Yeah, it does.
So what I do in my position here is I am a sales training specialist. I do trainings on our different technologies here. I run a coaches program just for people that are really wanting to invest in that ancillary production, where we meet weekly, go over strategies, different ancillary products, and just a really deep dive into that. I also continue selling and doing my own thing on the side. I've been doing the Medicare stuff for years, and I never wanted to stop because it's something that I enjoy, being able to help people as well. And I found that translates to being able to help agents too, because I can talk through different processes and we can go through different ideas together.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thanks for being here today. Gio is, like he said, he is someone that works with training here and training agents, and anybody who's worked with him have just raved about him. And so we're excited to have you on here today with us, Gio. Excuse me, I have a lingering cough, so you'll have to excuse that. Before we dive into it here today, I have a few housekeeping items. First thing is today will be recorded, so if you have to hop off, that's totally fine. We will put this on our YouTube channel, and we also will link this in a follow-up email you will be receiving after this webinar today or early tomorrow. We'll also have some other resources in there for cross-selling as well. And then, of course, please always call our office if you have any questions about anything regarding today and anything that we talked about here today. But, also, one of the most important things, please feel free to use that chat box. We would love to interact with you guys. It makes our job a lot more fun, makes it a lot more, you get a lot more out of it. And yeah, please feel free to ask questions. We'll have a Q&A at the very end, but throw your questions, comments, concerns, threats, promises into the question box all throughout the webinar. We're happy to chit chat with you guys. But without further ado, guys, let's get into it. Like I said, 2026, people in this industry, specifically in the senior market, are really looking for ways to grow their business, looking for ways to keep their agency stable. There's been a lot of, what's the word? I'm already losing the word. A lot of disruption. I was going to say confusion. That's, well, I mean, I guess kind of.
A little bit of both.
But yeah, it's a little bit of both. But lots of disruption after this last AEP, and then even while we're looking towards this next AEP, it looks like it's going to be another crazy AEP. And so people are looking for ways to make sure that they are maintaining the business that they have. And one of the most kind of common ways, or one of the most efficient ways, one of the best ways that you can do that is cross-selling. Now, cross-selling is not a new topic. We have been talking about it here at Senior Marketing Specialists for years. I was just telling Gio, I've been here for almost 7 years, in this role for about 6. And I was like, we used to do so many cross-selling webinars that I could basically do it in my sleep. Like I could just, and now there's a need for it more than ever. And so we're happy to be kind of being back on that, preaching the gospel of cross-selling here. But today we really want to speak more towards the people who are either new to this industry and they're looking for ways to kind of separate themselves from other people who are doing the same thing as them. Their competition down the street is selling the exact same core products as them. but then also for people who are dancing around the idea of cross-selling, but just haven't quite pulled the trigger on it yet. Today, we want to encourage you with some reasons why this is such a good idea, why it's such a good investment into your company, why it's such a good investment into your clients and how you help them. So the first thing that we want to talk about here today is what you're missing out on if you're not cross-selling. I think that sometimes people think that not cross-selling is no harm, no foul, but really you're missing out on a whole lot, including growth in your company. Now, one of the obvious things here, we're not even going to dance around it because we don't work for free. Of course, we want to help people the best that we can, but we don't work for free. This is our career. This is our job. So first thing we want to talk about is your loss of income, specifically around those loss of PDP commissions. Gio, I'm chit-chatting too much. You take over.
No, you are fine. So yeah, I mean the loss of the PDP commissions are huge. Obviously, you know, the suppression of the PDP plans, it's been a nightmare. You know, we've seen agents that have had huge book of business, you know, with certain carriers that cut commissions, and that's hard to come back from, right? Like that's a big loss of income. So being able to come back from that by integrating ancillary sales successfully is a good way to combat that. Right. Obviously, it's still frustrating that has even occurred, but you have to look at it from two sides of the coin too. Like these ancillary products, it's not just beneficial to you as the agent; it's beneficial to the client. And you know, one of the things that we'll talk about later when we get into some more specifics is, you know, my whole start into the ancillary business. Interestingly enough, it did not start because I was cross-selling. It started because I was working with clients and I'd have these long conversations and I'd find out, man, they're in a good spot already. I can't, you know, there's nothing, I wouldn't change their core plan. And at the time, years ago, I didn't know as much about the ancillary products, and I just kind of started to get frustrated because I'm like, man, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm going through, you know, crossing my T's, dotting my I's, and I'm not doing as well as I need to do, right? Well, that's when I started doing my research into the ancillary stuff, and I started actually selling a lot of ancillary standalone before I even started doing the cross selling because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think we'll talk about some common fears that we hear from agents and some like maybe objections that we get from agents on why they don't want to cross sell. And we were just talking about this offline about how I was saying, well, there's no harm, no foul. If you offer it and they say no, then they don't. And you were talking about how, you know, at the end of the day, like agents don't want to be salesy and they're afraid of being salesy and coming off salesy. And we'll kind of hit on that, some ways to combat that here in just a little bit. But that's what's keeping people, some of that fear is what's keeping people from receiving this extra income, this profit that they can have because of a fear of being salesy, which is totally and absolutely legit. And you know that you're in the right industry if like, and you know you're right where you need to be if those are the kinds of things that you worry about. But we'll talk about some of those fears here in just a minute. But one thing that I was taught when I like first started working here, and even more so now, is that you know, core products kind of keep the lights on. Core products are the things that are like your bread and butter. Those are the things that you know you're going to sell. Those are the things that you know you're going to prospect for. People are going to come to you. There's always going to be a wave of people who are turning 65, but people are always looking for ways to grow their business. And they're wondering, well, how do I grow my business? There's only so many seniors. There's only so many people turning 65. Of course, you can get rewrite from people from other businesses and whatnot, but that's not that easy. Cross-selling is going to be such an, I don't want to say easy because at the end of the day, like this is a job, but it's such an obvious way in which you can make this extra income.
I will add to that. It does get easier once you find the way to present it that you're comfortable with. It becomes second nature. You know, you think of anything else, like when you first think of the first Advantage plan you sold, think of the first supplement plan you sold, think of where you're at in that mindset. I remember the first supplement I did, and I'm like, where's the signature process? Where do I do this? Where do I do that? I remember the first Advantage. I'm like, oh, I got to say all these disclosures. I got to make sure I say this, that, and the other thing. Now I feel like I can do it like it's nothing. And you know, the same will be said with the ancillary products. Once you get comfortable with that process, because we talk about the main things like what are people's objections, what is preventing people from doing it, and I can tell you the top things. Sadie had mentioned earlier, the fear of being too salesy is probably the number one. The second thing is just not knowing enough about the product and not knowing how it functions. And then the recent one that I've talked about a lot with people is people are like, well, what's the claims process like? And that's very easy to jump in and figure out too. So I think if you're, you know, we'll talk about the sales stuff, you know, but to be comfortable with the product that you're selling, be comfortable with the system and the platform that you're using, and just know the ins and outs of it, that's half the battle right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one of the next things we want to talk about is retention. I love talking about retention because I think that sometimes it's something that client or that agencies, you can get stuck in a rut of just constantly wanting to bring in new leads, and you're not looking for the opportunity that you're already sitting on. Of course, like if you have a bunch of people on the books with a core product with you, you say, okay, well, I can't write a second core product, but that's a group of people that you don't have to bring on. Client acquisition costs aren't there anymore because they're already your client, and you're able to cross-sell to them, to the people who are already on a books with you. Or like you mentioned, I know that, and you can kind of talk about this a little bit, but like you've mentioned how, you know, you've had people come into your office, they already have a core product, but you're able to make them your client because you're able to cross-sell to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can think of a couple different examples of that. You know, I think, you know, even, and not to go segue into the PDP stuff, but that's a whole nother thing where I've had so many clients that did not get set up with PDPs, and then they've came over to me because of that. Like I handle everything. I've had the same thing happen with ancillary products, where I've sold somebody, let's say, a hospital indemnity plan, and then later in the year they have questions on their plan. They're not reaching out to their agent, they're reaching out to me, and they're saying, hey, this plan's not working for me anymore. I know you helped me with this. Can we look at some other options? And we end up enrolling them on another plan because I've offered them something that their agent has not. And I've demonstrated knowledge, and we'll kind of go through that, but I've demonstrated knowledge by reviewing their plan, answering some questions as I went through that sales process, trying to see if I could do something else, and then pitching that ancillary product, because in their mind they're like, hey, this guy was a lot more thorough than the person I worked with before. Then when they have questions, they're reaching out to me and becoming my client. I'm not going to say that it's going to happen every single time, every ancillary that you sell, you're going to have that, but the chance is there, and I've had it happen more than once. And I mean, it's a good feeling when you have somebody reaching out to you like, hey, you really did a good job here. I want you to handle something else of mine too. Can you help me through this process?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I love that testimony to it because like we said, that fear of, it's like on the other side of it being, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to be too salesy. On the other side of that, there's also this perspective of people being like, oh, wow, okay, so you're able to offer me products that other people aren't. You're able to offer me solutions to these risks and that I have with these core products that I didn't even know I had, or that like I didn't realize there was a solution to. Like there's a second side to it, which at the end of the day, it's like these risks are real. If you are on a Medicare Advantage plan, like those hospital copays, like that's a real risk.
Right.
That's not something we're making up. That's not something that that's a real risk. And so being able to offer those products to people is something that's going to make people want to come to you, like you said, or it's going to keep people on the books because they're going to say, okay, well, I don't want to take my core product somewhere else because I feel secure here. I feel like my agent is able to take care of me in ways that I trust them to be able to take care of me. Let's see. Oh yes, another thing I was trying to think of, you mentioned something that I was like, but yeah, just like being an advisor, we hear agents so often say, like, I'm a Medicare advisor, I'm a Medicare, but really it's like you're just an order taker if you're just helping them out with the things that they expect to come in and pay for. They know that they're going to come in and they know they're going to get a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan. But one thing about especially T65ers, they come in, a big misconception about Medicare is people sometimes think that, oh, well, Medicare pays for everything. Medicare pays
Hmm.
for, and Medicare pays for a lot, but they're pushing off all of these things. They're pushing off these surgeries, they're pushing off these procedures and stuff like that because they're like, well, when I get on Medicare, Medicare covers everything. And so it's kind of a shock if they get on these plans and they realize that, oh, there's actually these pretty big gaps in my coverage that they didn't realize. Like, being able to have a solution to that is also something that's going to like secure them with you, where a lot of agents aren't doing that. They get put on these plans and then they have these big gaps, and yeah, there's a
No, and
lot
if
of
you
like
if
things
you
to
think
talk
about it
about.
too, Sadie, it's the interesting thing, interesting part about it is you're already talking about gaps when you sell a Medicare supplement or Medigap plan, right?
Right.
You're talking about what Medicare doesn't cover when you're selling this Medicare Advantage plan and putting them on these Medicare Advantage plans. But there's other things. Yeah, you're going to talk about the 20%, the no max out of pocket, not coverage for prescriptions. But why is it so hard if they're doing a supplement to bring up like, hey, there's no coverage for dental, vision, and hearing. Hey, home health care coverage is very limited. Hey, if you have a critical illness diagnosis, like that's something that obviously non-medical costs are not going to be covered. So there's a lot of things like you already talk about what Medicare doesn't cover already. We're just missing some of the extra things that it doesn't cover. And I can tell you from another, and I know I'm skipping around here a little bit, but
No, of course.
I can tell you from another mindset, another perspective for me, why I like to bring these products up. I used to work a lot of leads. I'm more on the referral basis now, but when I worked a lot of leads, I can't tell you the amount of calls that would come through where I'd either have somebody in a hospital bed where I could hear a machine beeping in the background and they're calling me about final expense. Or I have somebody that says, hey, I was just diagnosed with cancer. I heard of a cancer policy. Can you tell me about that? Or I'm having, I've had so many of those conversations. It's like, I want to make sure I just get those out in my main conversation so they understand how that stuff works. We'll probably come back to that a little bit because I have another example I want to share on when we get further down in our presentation here. But you don't ever want to have that call from somebody later on saying, hey, I know I've been diagnosed with this. I need this now. And it's, they would have gotten it if you would have brought it up in the first place and been in a better spot.
Absolutely. Well, Gio, I know that a lot of people here aren't just they understand the benefits of cross-selling. They understand it's just about doing it. It's just about
Mm-hmm.
taking that next step. It's just about figuring out, well, what do I do next? How do I do this? Where do I fit in? So what we want to talk about next is how to choose a product. And really by that, we just mean how to take the next step. The next step is figuring out, okay, well, what do you want to offer? And there's a few different questions that you can ask yourself that can kind of help you decide to take that next step to get contracted with something to start working it. First thing, of course, the obvious, well, what core product are you selling the most? We just talked about, and we'll continue to talk about how there are obvious gaps in these core products. Medicare doesn't cover everything. These extra supplemental things in Medicare Advantage plans, they still don't cover everything. There's still going to be real risks in their coverage. So first question you should ask yourself on figuring out where to start is, well, what product am I selling the most?
Right, because if you're primarily selling a Medicare Advantage, the ancillary products that you're going to pair alongside with an Advantage are going to be very different than if you were selling a supplement policy, right? If you're selling a supplement policy, those are going to look a lot different. What you would recommend as far as ancillary for them. For example, we know a lot of Advantage plans include the dental, vision, and hearing coverage, depending on the area. We know we saw some drawbacks and cutbacks on some plans, but in a lot of cases, if somebody wants that coverage, there's a lot of plans available that offer that. The supplement has zero coverage on that, right? So that to me, for a supplement, if you're going to start doing ancillary production, I think on the supplement side, dental, vision, and hearing is the easiest one to sell paired with a supplement. Now we go to the Advantage side. I think the easiest one to sell with an Advantage plan is a hospital indemnity, hands down. When you're going through those hospital copays and you're going through that max out of pocket, those are some scary big numbers. Great way to integrate that into the presentation, right? Now, that's not the only ancillary products that are available, right? We have cancer insurance. That's another one that I've done a decent amount of as well. I'm passionate about that for a variety of reasons. We have home health care, and both cancer and home health care, those can go either way. Those can be beneficial on both the supplement and the Advantage plan.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you were saying about like that hospital indemnity, and when we have a few things here, it says a few questions here. I agree. The biggest thing about is not knowing enough about the product, which we will get to. That is totally a common concern. We'll get to that here in just a minute. And then, can you provide us with an example of each type of ancillary products? There's lots of different ancillary products out there, but like we're saying, there's hospital indemnity, there's cancer products, there's DVH, there's home health care, there's final expense, lots of these extra things. But like you were saying with that Medicare Advantage plan and the hospital indemnity plans, when you're going through that educating process, they're able to see those gaps in coverage. It's quite obvious. That kind of helps combat the salesy thing because they're immediately able to see. And then DVH, if you're selling a lot of MedSup, it's such an easy product. That's the thing about DVH is I know that that's one thing that if someone asks me, well, what's like the easiest product to start out with? What's like the easiest way to dip my toe into these cross-selling things? Start with DVH and write your Medicare supplement clients on it. You can sell off the brochure. You don't really have to explain what dental coverage is. People understand what dental coverage is. To those T65ers, they're used to having dental coverage. And so if you're letting them know, hey, if you go on this Medicare supplement, you're not going to have any dental coverage, that right there, they're used to having it. So you even offering that is a big deal. And then even with Medicare Advantage,
I was going to say too, Sadie, there's so many inexpensive competitive dental options now too.
yes.
I mean, the main way that I have, again, when I have not done cross-selling but sold, I did a lot of individual dental plans. I'd simply ask people, I'm like, hey, so when they would give me a price for, if I had a lead come through and they would give me a price for the Medicare supplement, I would automatically ask every time, now is that with your dental coverage bundled into, assuming they have that coverage? And they're like, well, no, I pay out of pocket for that. I was like, oh, okay, how much are you paying out of pocket for that? You know, and I get what their cleanings and everything are costing them, and I'm like, I can get a dental policy that covers that, and you've got comprehensive coverage, and you're going to be paying similar to what you're paying now, kind of thing.
Yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So here are some good examples here. Considering the obvious gaps in coverage, those MAPDs, you can always have a hospital indemnity plan offered with those as well. Cancer, we could do a whole presentation. We've done whole campaigns. We have a whole program here at Senior Marketing Specialists talking about why we love cancer insurance so much and why it means so much to us, which takes us into our next point. Senior Marketing Specialist is very passionate about cancer insurance for a lot of different reasons. But the next thing that you should consider, or another thing that you should consider when you're choosing a product or what step to take next with cross-selling, choose a product that you believe in. Like we said, there is a lot of obvious gaps. There's a lot of hospital indemnity plans are offered with Medicare Advantage plans because they were quite literally designed to puzzle piece fit with a Medicare Advantage plan. But things like cancer might be a little less obvious until you explain or until you really dive into some of the reasons why or some of the risks that you're taking with cancer. So I use that as an example, but it could really be anything. Maybe you have been really affected or a loved one has really been affected by having home health care coverage, or how big of final expense or lack thereof, how you wish. Looking at how you wish that maybe a loved one had final expense. Look into these ancillary products that you really believe in most, because you're going to want to sell and you are going to educate well on these products that you truly have a connection with.
Well, and to add to that, what product do you believe in most? If you truthfully believe in a product, you're going to have that product on yourself. Or you're going to have something very similar.
True.
You know, the example that I talk about with my clients, and you'll hear me say hospital indemnity a lot, because that's one that I'm very, very passionate about. You know, I have accident insurance. I have had multiple claims on that accident insurance, right? So I will give those examples to clients. I'm like, this is the type of coverage that I have. You know, this is what this coverage would look like for you if we did something here. You know, and they'll ask me about it, like, well, what happened when you got into an accident? I'm like, well, I wrecked my car. Here's what happened. Here's what I had to do. here's the compensation I got, so I wasn't out of pocket. I have personal stories that I could share. I have personal stories that I can share on the cancer coverage with some. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of cancer in my family, so I have things that I can do there. I'm getting ahead of myself. You're right there. Use personal
Right.
stories,
Yeah.
because that makes it authentic, right? I mean, if
Yes.
you're sharing something personal about yourself, that opens the door for the client to bring that up and to bring stuff up as well, and talk about their personal stories. I always tell people, as soon as the client starts sharing their personal story, kind of turn yours off, because they're sharing themselves. Now, you don't want to overshadow what they're selling or what they're saying. And the more they're talking about their experience with a specific issue, the more they're kind of creating that value and that need for themselves, and they're seeing that. And you can come back in, and you talk about not wanting to feel salesy. That's the way to do it right there. That
Right.
in integration. You don't want to be bringing stuff up at the very end. It should be throughout the whole process.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think I know when we talk about specifically again cancer, I'm using that as an example on this because I feel like that's a really good example for this specific thing. But another thing that you want to avoid and that people want to avoid is, well, I don't want to use fear tactics. I don't want to make
Mhm.
someone scared of worst case scenario. I just want to educate them on it. And using personal stories allows you to just show the reality of what it can be like without that coverage, without using these, really scary fear tactics. It can be good if you know someone who has had cancer insurance, talking about how much of a burden release it was in order for them to have it. I know I have stories of people who are like that and people who are the opposite. And so it just makes it more personal, which might make it feel a little, it makes it a little bit more real and gives people that visual of how helpful it can be. So
You have to almost be comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's not always comfortable being in that vulnerable position and talking about that stuff, but it's
right.
not always comfortable for the clients either. So if they can see you having empathy in that situation, it
Yeah.
helps.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the topic, whether you're selling just a core product or not, talking about health insurance and talking about these things that could happen to you and the risks, that's an uncomfortable thing. That's what you've signed up for. You've signed up to help people and make sure that they're covered in the most uncomfortable things that they can go through. And so, yes, these are just some extra things that you have to kind of tack on there. But it's better to, and this is kind of jumping ahead too, is it's not your job to get them to say yes. It is just your job to get them to know what their risks
Educate.
are and to
Yeah.
offer a solution to that. It's not about ancillary isn't about getting 100% yeses all the time. Ancillary sales is about you're able to grow your business while also offering people real solutions to real problems. And so as long as you're just letting them know that you offer it, that's your job at the end of the day, not making them say yes, not scaring them into saying yes or anything like that. Um, and then the next thing that you need to consider, of course, is time is money, money is time. And so, what do you have time for? And the reason why we consider this is, there's a lot of really successful agencies that we work with that do offer a plethora of ancillary products. But if you haven't sold ancillary products, if you haven't started off and you're just selling core products and including PDPs, you have to don't bite off more than you can chew. Sometimes people hear these things or like they watch this webinar or they hear like the queen of the bundle talk about this and they get really excited and they go and they get contracted with a bunch of these different things. And then they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. This is too
It's
much.
so overwhelming.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so overwhelming. I don't even know how to put this in my process right now because I just have too much. So we suggest that what do you have time for? Do you have time to add one or two? Do you have time to add DVH or add cancer or add what do you have time for right now? And then what you can do is this also helps combat people who are afraid of not knowing the product well enough. Just start with one or two. Just start with one, get to know the product, integrate it into your process, and then start adding more on as you see need, as you see fit. But
So, and you can look here at our recommendations if you're like, okay, I really just want to focus on one product that would work for both Advantage and Supplement, cancer and home health care, right? If you're like, okay, like I want to do two products, I'm comfortable doing two products, find something to where it's like, okay, Advantage plan, 100% get your hospital indemnity, 100%. I will say it again, I feel that that's the easiest, one of the easiest ancillary products to sell because it just makes sense. And when you go through that process and you outline it and you're just kind of laying the numbers in front of the client, a lot of times it makes sense to them too.
Right. Yes, yeah, exactly. Especially hospital indemnity, because like I said, like those are plans that were literally specifically made for Medicare Advantage plans. They were made to tack on to that. So they're filling in, you know, real risks, real potential. What do you have time for? A big thing, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, is about how people say, I don't really know how to add all of these things. I don't know how to work them into my process. I don't have time to learn it. I don't have time to figure out the process. So the next thing we want to talk about is how to integrate cross-selling into your conversations. This is really going to help, or we hope that it helps you combat some of those fears that you have about making it too salesy, because at the end of the day, it's really about how you present it and then also how you feel about it. I think that what are you passionate about? What do you see the most value in is a really important thing here, and can kind of help with this as well. So we have to take that into consideration. But the very first thing is having a strong fact-finding process. A big mistake that people make when they are making a sale is every appointment is exactly the same. Every appointment is the same presentation, is not finding out anything all that unique to that person. It's just about finding out the really basic things. Having a good fact-finding process allows you to personalize each of your meetings. It allows you to personalize each of your products. Now, when you say, what is fact-finding? I'm talking about asking their health history, which you probably are doing that, the family health history. What are your fears? What are the things that you are most worried about? There's a lot of different ways in which you can do this. Actually, not yesterday, but Tuesday, 2 days ago, if you're wanting to kind of dive a bit more into like, what is fact-finding process? How do I do that? How do I amplify it? How do I make the most of it? Medicare Cafe, if you go to that YouTube page, Chaylin and Olivia did a really great presentation on kind of diving into your fact-finding process. But really, at the end of the day, having a fact-finding process, a really strong one, is going to help you be able to personalize, not just, you know, the core products, but also those extra sales, personalize their benefit package to them, which kind of helps combat with that, making it too salesy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times when you're just going through conversation, when you talk about having a strong fact finding process, you know, pay attention to context clues, body language, you know, things that people say. I used to say all the time, like when I would train people that were doing phone sales, like if the client hasn't said anything for a while, there's probably something that you missed that you probably need to stop and go back and re-educate or go through, or you're going too fast. So there's just a lot of context clues. You know, when I started, I always share this because it's kind of a goofy story, but I had a very difficult time with my pacing when I started with sales. Like I would go either too fast or maybe I'd spend too much time and get to too much detail. So I grabbed a whiteboard and I'd just write out what I was saying so I could kind of help manage my time, and it helped a lot,
Yeah.
just to where I wasn't going too fast and I had a good tempo.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then having a good fact-finding process, I like the idea of like having a form that they fill out when they're like kind of like in a doctor's office, because you're asking them all these questions. Do you have a history of cancer? Are you worried about hospital copays? I mean, you can ask them specific questions like that. So then when you're bringing up these coverages, you're able to, and you're educating them on their risks, you're able to pinpoint that, and you're kind of, while you're looking at this form, you're able to personalize in your head, okay, what do I need to make sure to hit on specifically for these people? Because this is what they're most concerned about. They do have a history of cancer and so on and so forth. So having a strong fact-finding process. And then Um, this is a point, Gio, that you were talking about the other day that
Yep.
I thought was just, yeah, this can make all the difference, is selling during the appointment. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that and how you do that, how you incorporate it in your process versus making kind of the grave mistake of just throwing in ancillary products at the end?
Right at the end, yeah. So we touched on it very briefly earlier, but I had talked about it kind of like if you have a new to Medicare client and you're talking about those gaps in coverage, making sure that you mention those things early on, because essentially what you're doing is you're planting the seed to come back to that. So it's not just something that the client or the who you're talking to is just blindsided at the end. Because if somebody is going to sell me a product, I'm like, okay, good, I'm ready to go. Hey, but wait, let me sell you something else. That's exactly how it's going to come across. And everybody that has that fear, that's a realistic fear. So how do we get over that fear? Well, you don't just bring it up at the end. It's integrated in the process. When I sell a hospital indemnity plan, whether it's to an existing client or it's a standalone sale, we are reviewing their copays, and I'll ask the client, hey, are you aware of what your hospital copays are? Or are you aware of what your max out of pocket is? I'm like, okay, well, let me go over that, because that's kind of a higher expense that we see some concerns with. So your copay is $500 a night for the first week. So essentially what that looks like is if you're in the hospital for 2 or 3 days, you'd be looking at $1,000, maybe $1,500. Your max out of pocket, if you max that out, that would be $6,700. And you can kind of hear the shock sometimes in people's voices because they're just not aware of that and they don't remember it. The only people that remember it are going to be the people that recently had a claim member recently hospitalized, for the most part. That is what I have found. So when I bring that up, what I like to transition to, and I'm like, now that's pretty typical of Advantage plans. We do see high hospital copayments here. What I do for my clients is this: I set them up with a hospital plan that helps cover these copays, so you're not responsible for all of this, and it limits that. We'll come back to that later. I just wanted to let you know so you weren't worried about it right now. And then I continue going through the product. What
Yeah.
that does is that allows me to naturally bring it back up later. And sometimes I don't even have to naturally bring it back up. The client brings it back up. Hey, you had told me about this. I wanted to look into that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'll bring it up in trying to plant that seed, the client will have a lot of interest, and I kind of have to say, hey, we'll come back to it, because I don't want to completely go off to the side, right? Like I want to say, hey, we got to focus on the core stuff first. But I found that being extremely successful. It doesn't feel salesy at all to me. It just feels like, hey, this is what I would do for myself. This is what I would do for a family member. It is what I do for family members. It is what I do for my clients. And that's
Right.
all I'm outlining to them, because it limits their out-of-pocket exposure. It protects them. Excuse me. Um, I have my favorite sales process story. I mean, I guess I have a bunch, but one of my favorite ones to talk about specifically with the hospital indemnity is I had somebody that I was talking to on the plan that's the ideal fit. I mentioned what it was as we were reviewing her copays. And immediately she stopped me and she said, wait, what is that? And I said, oh, okay, let me explain this again. She's a little pause. She's like, yeah, I'd like that. I didn't know that there was something like that. I'm still paying off my last ambulance bill. I wish I had that.
Yeah.
Nobody had said anything to her about it. And that to me, like, I didn't have to sell anything. I was
Right.
just explaining to her, hey, here's what I do. And she stopped me and was like, hey, what, can you explain that one more time? Because she knew what her copays were
Yeah.
and was currently paying that off. So I think that can be applicable with everything else. I touched specifically on hospital indemnity because that's the one that I think is the easiest to do with Advantage plans. But it's the same type of stuff with any type of product that you're working with. If you are working with cancer insurance, when you start going over those Part B, co-payments for the I'm missing my word here, but your Part B coinsurance when you're getting services done at the hospital is 20% on these Advantage plans. When you're getting chemotherapy or any type of cancer treatment, that copay is 20%. That's another way that you hit that max out of pocket. That's another way to integrate, kind of talking about like, yeah, cancer is another way, we offer that. Like, it's just, you're just mentioning these and planting the seeds throughout the presentation. So when it comes to the end, you're not pulling, oh, but wait, there's more. Let me sell you this. Let me sell you this. Let me
Right.
sell you this. You're naturally able to come back to those things And in a lot of cases, the client will naturally want to come back to those things, or they'll ask you about it. Sometimes I have found, and I know I said this already, that I have to kind of like say, hey, we'll come back to it, I promise, but we got to focus on
Yeah,
this main thing first because we got a lot to get through with your Advantage
right.
plan. And again, you talk about home healthcare, you talk about dental. We can't go through every single transition process, but it all varies on the product. The key in all of this is you're talking about it throughout the presentation, so it's expected. It's not something that's just this shock value at the end that they have heard nothing about it, and they're like, wait, what are they trying to do now?
Right. They can put the pieces together. They can see what we've talked about in, in the prior conversations and see, oh, I understand why they're bringing this up. That's the thing is whenever when it gets to feel a little too salesy, even if you have the best intentions, is if they can't relate this product back to the risks that we've already talked about, then they're going to be like, oh, well, they just want to tack it on. If they're able to connect it back into the things that you've already talked about, like you said, a lot of times it kind of sells itself. Let's see. We have a couple questions here. Do you have a deep dive training on the ancillary products? Love this question. Yes, we do. We have a lot of trainings. We have a lot of older webinars as well that you can go back on our YouTube page, that you can go back on our YouTube page and check out. Also, we will be linking our Senior Marketing Specialist University, our training website. We will be linking that in our follow-up email, and we have different pages and different product trainings for a lot of different types of ancillary products. So we have lots and lots of resources on that. We even have some mock appointments, so you can watch a client from our sister company, SBS Senior Benefit Services, and watch a real agent in how he cross-sells. So we have lots and lots of training on that. Some scope of appointments do not include cancer. Do we need to put that conversation off as a follow-up? This is a really, really good question. I'm about to sneeze, so Gio, handle this.
So yeah, if it's not something that's listed on the scope of appointment and you're specifically it is showing, dental, vision, hearing, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to bring that up if cancer is specifically not listed on the scope of appointment and all the other ancillary products are. The only kind of workaround that I would say I've kind of seen for that is if you're using our Integrity platform, it just lists ancillary products. So cancer is included in ancillary products as of now, compliance wise, right? Everything's always subject to change with that. So, but as of right now, like that is what we have instructed people to do. But if you're using a scope of appointment that says ancillary products and then lists each of the ancillary products out and cancer is not listed, yeah, you're going to have to do that in a separate appointment. But even if that's the case, like that's not the end of the world either. You can easily reach back out to that client and have that conversation. Talking about, hey, we work with this, but not going into the details as you're going through somebody's plans. There's nothing wrong with mentioning that briefly as you're going through their co-payments on their Advantage plans. You just can't get into all the product specifics and sell that product on the same call.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good question, Michelle. And then also just setting the expectations if you do have to do a follow-up, just setting the expectations like he said, letting them know, hey, I'm gonna reach back out to you. I want to talk to you about this certain coverage or whatever it may be. You're able to do that, but yeah, that is one thing. And that's why we highly suggest using scope of appointment on Integrity Center, because it does cover all ancillary things. So really good question. And then the last point that we kind of want to hit home here today is that at the end of the day, it's not your job to get a yes. It's not your job to sell a million of these, of course that would be great, but add a hospital indemnity to every single plan. At the end of the day, you want it to be your client's choice, of course. But it is your job to educate them on their risks. If you are more worried about being too salesy than you are on the risks that your clients will have if you don't sell it, you need to reevaluate. Or you don't understand the product itself, which is totally valid. We have lots of different trainings on it. Again, it goes back to don't sell a product that you don't believe in, of course. But it is not your job it's not your client's job to know what your solutions are to their risks. It is your job to just offer that, and so that way they know. And a no today does not always mean a no later. They might say, no, I don't really see the need for cancer insurance now, and then might come back in a year from now and go, you know, my friend had cancer and she had, I can see it now. You just never know. But
Hmm.
being able to offer that and let them know that, hey, this is something that we offer, um, makes a world of a difference.
I think too, everybody gets so wrapped up, and I have to be the 100% product expert and know how to overcome every objection. And you really don't. Like that, I think that that kind of comes with more time. You know, when I first started bringing up, and again, I'm going to sound like a broken record with the hospital indemnity, but it is not salesy if you're talking about what their co-payments are and you say, hey, this is what I do for my clients to help with this, so you're not having that $2,000 bill after a few days in the hospital. That's not salesy. You're just being honest and saying, this is what I do because this is what I believe in, and this is how I take care of my clients. There's nothing, again, salesy about that. Yes, you're going to have some objections, and I tell everybody in the beginning, don't worry about the objections. Start integrating into your presentation, start figuring out how to do that, and then after you're comfortable integrating it and you start to say like, hey, I'm starting to get some of these same objections. How do I work through these? That's when we
Yes.
can have that conversation, you know. um
Yeah.
I think, one of the biggest things I found out, like after I started doing it, when I would get an objection, most of the time what it was, most of the time, I might say 100% of the time, because you have people that just can be stubborn, we all know that,
Sure.
but a lot of the times with the hospital indemnity, what I found out is people just didn't understand how it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I can vividly remember conversations with people that went like, yeah, I don't think so. I think maybe I'll look at it a different time. I don't need it now. And I said, let me go back a little bit, because that threw up a red flag. I don't need it now. I was like, I don't think they understand how this works.
Hmm.
Right. So we go back, and my favorite example I always love to tell people is like, hey, you don't get full coverage after you hit the deer. Right. So I would explain that to them, and like, oh, I'd see kind of a light bulb go off, and they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, let's
Right.
get that set up. And it was
Yes.
just an easy conversation. Didn't feel salesy. It was just like, well, let me make sure you understand. And a lot of times that was the biggest objection that I would have, is people just didn't get that they had to have it before the fact sometimes, even though
Yeah.
you explain it that way. And we all know that as insurance people, sometimes it's just, it has to be explained more.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what it is at the end of the day, is just making sure that you are educating and educating and educating. Um, and you can educate all up front sometimes, and you're still going to get those no's, and that's okay. Sometimes the real education is them seeing a real life example of, that happening. Unfortunately, sometimes it's happening to them. Sometimes it's happening to a loved one, and then they come back and they really see it. But just making sure that you are educating people, that's your job at the end of the day, is making sure that they understand, and it is their choice to say yes or no. But just educating, because these risks are real. That's the thing. Is these aren't just products that are just made just to, oh yeah, just for fun, we'll give you, extra or whatever. These are products that are made for very real risks. So just making sure that your clients know that. That's your job.
And I will say too, one more thing that I want to add, it is okay to sell the product in a follow-up appointment. I know how long some of these Medicare Advantage appointments can go. I have clients that are fine pushing through and saying, no, I want to do everything today. I have people where I can literally hear the exhaustion on the phone because we've gone through a dozen medications. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to call you next week at this time specifically, and we're going to get this set up. I don't say, hey, I'm going to reach out to you sometime next week, sometime Tuesday. I set a specific appointment. I say, hey, I'm going to reach out to you at this time, this day, next week, and we're going to get this set up for you as well, because I know it's been a long call today.
Yeah,
And you just assume
absolutely.
that. And I've had success with that too. So don't think that just because, I get the mindset of like, oh, this has been a long call, there's no way that I can do this unless they go. Ask the client, just tell them like, hey, that's okay, I understand. I'm going to reach out to you. What's a good time next week? Let's get that scheduled.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, today was a very, very high level training. It was, or I'm sorry, just very 10,000 overview, 10,000 foot overview of, oh my gosh, can I get my sayings right? Of, I'm struggling here. We have cast a really wide net today, as far as just like, we're talking about the tip of the iceberg here today. We have some questions in here. We have some questions on, can we get more deep dives on products? Can we have a follow-up training with each type of product and required disclosures and all this sort of stuff? Great. This is exactly what we want from this. we want you guys to be excited and really believe in these extra products. So today, if you did not get enough, of course, we will have more trainings coming up, but please, please, please call our team. We want to work with you. We want to help you understand these products better so that way you feel better. We want to help you pick out the right products as well. Like he said, there's a lot of options for a lot of these plans. There's a lot of different things, and we have a team that can help you out with that, figure out what products work best for you. With no pressure at all, and then start thinking about those 1 or 2 products that maybe you want to consider starting with. Maybe it is a hospital indemnity, maybe it is cancer, or maybe you're just somewhere where you're like, before I even think about that, I want more training on this. Fantastic. In the follow-up email, we will have some links to different things. But if you want specific training, we'll have some new webinars coming up. And then you can always call our office. Our Senior Marketing Specialist University page that you can access from our website has lots of good stuff on there as well. Medicare Cafe, if you don't watch Medicare Cafe, I have seen a few names on here that I know you guys watch the Medicare Cafe. We love talking about cross-selling. In April, we are doing a cross-selling symposium. So every Tuesday at 10 a.m., it is a YouTube live. It's really fun. The team is really fun, really relaxed. Drink some coffee, hang out, talk about the industry, and we'll be doing a whole series on deep diving into some core or some ancillary products. So there's lots of new trainings coming up, but if you want it today and you just can't handle it, call our team. We would love to help you out. Gio, while we're diving into questions, please throw your questions in there. I know that you said that hospital indemnity is something that like you're really, really passionate about, but if it weren't hospital indemnity, what's like another product that you think would just be really easy for people to start out with? Something that people can really see the value in, and yeah, like what would be your 1 to 2? That's what I'm asking.
So I would say, I think it's almost a tie between 2 different things. So hospital indemnity would be my go-to, especially if you're doing a decent amount of Advantage Business, hands down. That would 100% be my number 1. The second one, we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think the DVH, the dental, vision, and hearing, I think that's a very easy product to sell, and I have cross-sold a lot of that just by asking people, hey, is that bundled into your coverage? Oh, okay. Well, if you don't mind me asking, how much is that costing you now? And it's such an easy, simple process to me. So I almost say that would be my second one, but I also am very passionate about the cancer insurance and have done a lot of that as well. So it's like, for me, I'm like, it's kind of a tie, because the cancer insurance you can do on both, and the dental, vision, and hearing is more so to the supplement. So I think those would be my top ones. I mean, it's hard to choose. It really is. I can see the value of home healthcare as well.
Yeah.
But I think for me, if I were to look at my ancillary production, the most of it has been hospital indemnity, and then dental, vision, and hearing and cancer have got to be pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple years ago, Deft Research came out with, I don't know the specific statistic. I'm really good at bringing up statistics that I don't have specifics on, but I promise it's real. It was by Deft Research, and they came out and the numbers showed that one of the biggest reasons that people shopped, or T65ers shopped, Medicare Advantage plans, like that's what they wanted, was because of the dental coverage, which I remember when we found that out, we were like shocked, but it makes sense. People are used to having dental coverage. They probably expect, I know I was talking to my mom who in a year or two, trying to think of her exact age, but she will be turning 65, and I was just kind of like educating her. She was asking some questions, and I said, oh yeah, if you get a Medicare supplement, like or just stay with original Medicare, you're not going to have any dental coverage. You're not going to have any coverage for your glasses, which she has. You're not going to have any coverage for like hearing aids, which her dad, that's one of his biggest like health issues, is just like he needs those hearing aids. And so that was kind of a wake up call for her, and she was like, oh, that makes sense to go with the thing that kind of has it bundled in. But you would be surprised if you look at some of these statistics on how important these things are. And for us, it might be like, oh well, dental, vision, hearing, like it's just like an extra thing to do, but that might be, that's might be a big reason why people are it is a big reason why people are shopping the most popular type of plan, these Medicare Advantage plans in the industry. So it's just interesting. Does SMS have a questionnaire we can use? I'm assuming that you mean like a fact finding form, and we do have a couple of those. I will link them. I will make a note right here to have them linked in the follow-up email, but we do have a couple of those forms that you can use. But guys, it doesn't look like we have, oh, yes, we do. I find that some have a hard time with standalone DVH because they work so differently from what they are used to through work policies, claims, reimbursement, deductibles, etc. Totally, absolutely, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's coverage or not for some people. But yeah, is that ever any pushback or anything that you hear, Gio?
So I'll be honest, that for me, that's actually surprisingly, that's a new one for me. I actually haven't had that pushback when I do a dental, and I think a lot of it is because a lot of people that I've sold dental to, they've been on Medicare for a few years, and they've been referred over to me, or it's somebody that I'm just checking in on, and they just have been used to paying for that coverage out of pocket. So I mean, I kind of echo to what you say. It's like, yeah, it might be different, but it's the type of coverage that's available compared to just paying, out of pocket for everything. That's going to be worse. So again, and maybe that's just the demographic of clients that I've talked to, because a lot of times when I've asked people if they've bundled in dental with their supplements, and I'm doing that comparison shopping, a lot of times the answer is no, and I'm telling them why it's important because somebody else isn't.
Yeah, exactly. One, I think it's awesome that if you have seen that that's something that's common, that means that you've brought it up enough, that you're offering it, that you're talking about it enough, which is awesome. And like Gio said earlier, sometimes you just have to bring it up enough. You have to figure out like where the holes are at, where the disconnect is at. For me, it sounds like maybe just educating them a little bit more on it might work differently, but this is how, this is how it will fit, or whatever it may be. But really
Well,
solid point with
there was
Gio.
one thing specifically that was said, Sadie, talking about the reimbursements. I know not all the dental plans are reimbursements, and you can get ones that function more like you hand them your card, and that's how it works. Those are the ones that I like to sell. So that could be why I maybe that's an objection that I'm not thinking of. I've
Yeah.
kind of tried to stay away from the reimbursement style policies because I like to keep it a little bit more simple.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. And then she said it is after the sale. So yeah, bringing it up after the sale maybe could make a difference there. But guys, this is our contact information. We have just like, we'll stay on for 30 more seconds, let you get your questions in if you have any lingering ones, but these are the way that you can contact us. That's our phone number. That is our website. We also have live chat available. You'll always get a human, not a robot. Go and chit chat with Sean and Kendra, and chit chat with our team. They're the best over there. Senior Marketing Specialist University, sms-university.com. This is a training website that we have. If you want to take the next step in learning about ancillary products, go there. We have really good stuff on there. And then that's our YouTube page. Our YouTube page is where we put a lot of the content nowadays, not just webinars, but we put other trainings as well on our YouTube page. One video that will be in the follow-up email that I didn't mention was a couple years ago. It does need to be updated, but the information is still good. Matt Carson, he is now a VP of sales here, but he was an executive at the time. He made a video going through using kind of mock numbers of how much more income you can make if you're just selling a core product or adding cancer or adding hospital indemnity. So you get to see the numbers right in front of you in how much profit you can make, or potential profit you can make.
I remember that when that came out, because that spoke volumes. I was like, this is really cool, because you could go in and plug in different things and just be like, oh wow, I didn't realize that this is how much I could make even if I sold 25% of my clients,
That's exactly right.
product.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we will have that linked, and then hopefully we'll have a new one coming out here soon with some updated titles. But guys, that's what we have for you today. Hopefully you're excited. Hopefully this helped combat some of the fears. If not, give us a call and join some of our other trainings, because we'll have lots of cross-training stuff coming out now. Join the Medicare Cafe every week, but next month we'll have the cross-selling symposium. That should be a lot of fun. We'll kind of deep dive a little bit into more products. But yeah, give us a call if you have questions about this. Be considering those 1 to 2 products. But Gio, do you have anything else to add before we get out of here?
My piece of advice is going to be very generic. Just bring it up. Just start bringing it up, because you will be surprised if you integrate it properly and it's not something you're just throwing in at the end. If you just bring it up during that sales process, you'll get enough sales to where you're going to be surprised that you're not an expert on objections, but you're still going to get some sales and closes. I mean, I promise you, that is how I've done it. That is how I started. I just got my knowledge down to where I was comfortable, started talking about it throughout the process, and again, bringing it up alone gave me sales without being able to handle objections. After I started doing that, I was able to perfect and start working on my objection handling to increase it even more. So I promise you, it's not going to come up as salesy if you do it that way. If it's integrated in the process, you're going to be appreciated as an agent if you do that. And the client a lot of times is going to see that value. And even if they don't necessarily take that product, a lot of times it's going to be appreciated that you talked about that. And there's not going to be somebody else that comes in and takes that business because, like, oh, you know more than my other agent does, and you talked about X, Y, and Z, and he didn't say any of this. I've heard those words exactly. So just throwing that out there. So again, I would just say, just bring it up. It's going to be this, it comes across as this big scary thing, but think about the first time you sold an Advantage plan. Think about the first time you sold a supplement plan. This is no different.
Yeah, awesome. Spoken like a true pro. Mic drop. Awesome, guys. We'll let you get back to your day here today. But Gio, thanks so much for joining us, joining me here on this webinar today. But yeah, we'll let you guys get back to your day. Thanks so much.